What up? Okay, real quick. I really want to be over here. Can you guys hear me back there? Raising your hand, you can hear me okay? Okay, all right, this will work. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I know that this mic is for the camera. Do we need to move it? This will work? All right. I was recently asked by someone if I get nervous before readings, and I thought about it, and I said, not anymore. And but that is apparently not true today. My heart rate went up about an hour ago. I just want to thank everybody for being here today. Thank you for coming to this program and being part of it. Thank you for all the hard work that you guys do to make this happen. I'm intimately knowledgeable of the amount of work this kind of stuff takes. And it doesn't matter how many years you do it, it can be a real pain in the butt. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for having me. You have a lot of people to pick from, so I'm really honored. I'm going to read 5 poems. The first poem, if you have the book, you can follow along. It's on page 26. And the way it's basically going to work is I'm going to do a long-ish narrative poem, then a short lyric poem, then a long-ish narrative poem, and then a short lyric poem, then a longish narrative poem. This first poem is called The Word Damn and the Word God, and if you don't have a copy, it works like this. It's 2 tercets, which are 3-line stanzas, followed by, and I really need to pick your brain about this, a 1-line stanza, which there's a lot of disagreement about what this should be called. Jake out of York, who has appeared at this conference many times over the last few days, taught me that he called it a stitch, because it sort of stitched the poem together. T.R. Hummer disagrees. He says it's a monoset, which is exactly the sort of way T.R. Hummer would say. So tercet.
Mono-stitch.
Mono-stitch. A great compromise. It's called The Word Damn and the Word God. Who knows what strung those 2 words together on my tongue the summer Chris moved in across the alley. All those long June hours we tiptoed the rusted-out railroad, begging for the vibration of approaching freight, or playing Yahtzee, camped out in the dome tent pitched in his backyard, searching in the numbers for any sign of first light. But my money's on the afternoon, I stepped into a mining bee's hive, mid-stride catching a touchdown spiral with time running out, their home woven among the roots of Chris's peach tree. For weeks thereafter, St. Anne's across the street called, "Repent, repent." I, the kid who stormed the neighborhood in escape of bees, crying countless curses, every inch of my body scorched, a hymnal of goddams tucked between bicep and bird chest. Chris's father poured 2 gallons of gasoline on that construct of whispers, and my father let me watch him drop a lit match into the earth from our high kitchen window. That night, Chris gave me a mason jar of dead miners curled up like wolf spiders swept out from under the couch, and all night I dreamt of the mason's magic, bees rising on invisible spindles in the grass in that pause between time and conflagration. But my mother decided it was Chris, who through the darkness of a few nights later, she heard screaming "God dams" with each strike of the father's leather across the son's back. I cried when my father told me I no longer could play with Chris, and he wept when I said, "But Chris is all I have." Chris, who caught a carp a day later, his prize strung up by an arm's-thick tree branch through its breathers. Chris, who liked to strum the testicles of his pit bull Rex, mean as hell, kept chained to a sycamore by the alley between our yards, but when Chris was around, would turn into the sweetest of things. Chris, who I thought of this morning as fog lifted to reveal 3 acres of wheatgrass, frosted silver reaching for the pole star like a bed of nails, and I was flung back to the day I stumbled from Chris's basement with a 2x4 rust nailed to my heel, Chris unhooking Rex's chain, the panic bitter in my mouth, my eyes squeezed shut, then the warm slap of Rex's tongue from foot to nail, from nail to foot, Chris and I bearing witness to the healing power of a dog's saliva as he rubbed Rex's balls, and Rex groaned as blood eased from my skin. He and his father moved late that fall, chasing factories deep south, and now Chris lives in that place where everything seems true. Some say his father took to Evan Williams, some say Chris simply became what he already was. And I wish I could say I've run into him in line at the DMV or at some bar I've come to for the dancing, and there's Chris, stitched in the fishnets, neon strobes like moons in his vinyl knee-highs, eyes shadow thick as clay, and tired tread. Wish I could say we've laughed over beers and told old stories, slapped one another on the back and argued over the tab. But Chris's father didn't bother to clean the boning knife sequined from yet another Sunday on Arcbootla Lake. 3 largemouth reserved on their bed of ice, Rex outside howling. And now I wonder if this explains that summer of goddamns Chris yowled down all of those dreary railroad miles, how he always knew at the splits which curves turned toward the switchyard and which paved the path to Tennessee's Jerusalem. So glory be to the goddams, he cried, all those hours it takes a knife to the gut to kill a man. Goddams to the hours it must have taken Chris to die. Goddams to the carp we never caught, to the knife destined for Chris's gut. Goddams to all dogs too weak to loose their chains. Goddams to the stories we do not tell, to all fathers angry with their sons. Goddamn. If I could, I'd take Chris in my arms. I'd get down with the grit and linoleum and patch that rift of skin with my tongue. I'd hold the boy drunk between 2 lives. I'd freeze ourselves and wait for the sculptor who fools greatness out of stone. Our 2 bodies draped, one into the other. The word damn and the word God. It's getting hot in here. I've already taken off some of my clothes. Y'all are like, wait, this guy looked all, put together just a minute ago. Then his reading began. Okay, the second poem I'm going to read is the first poem in the book, Singing. It's on page 3. It's the last poem I wrote for the book. And I wrote it because Judy and I were working on putting it together. She worked tirelessly with me on this. And she said, you need a short poem at the beginning that communicates to the reader what the book is about and how it's going to work. I call these thesis poems, and usually a piece of rotten fruit flies out of the crowd at me when I say thesis and poem, the same thing. But that's how I thought about it. It was quite a winter writing this poem. This is called Singing. What do I know of God, but that each winter I thank him for it. No spider web snagged in the blue stem, no horseflies at rest in blossoming cones of henbit, no slug trails penned to the cool hoods of cars. We are creatures all, stillborn to the language of split pine rails standing in their pickets, ice glazed to bone in every rut, the stealth tracks of jays, a sleepless ideography in the snow. But we are not entirely alone between the mountain ranges. In these hours condemned to darkness before the sun jars open the face of February and the red glare of Mars grows dim. Just outside my door, the bur oak is wintered, full of grackles. Hundreds of coin-eyed scuttles ornamenting its branches. Here, my breath plumes gray. In the distance, brush catches fire. The wind, if you watch, is calligraphy. The stars in winter, a weightlessness. The grackles are doors, rasping their flight plans limb to limb. The grackles are doors, some limbed with light, others black. Rising, my arms have long been open. Stepping across these thresholds, I step across these thresholds. Singing, I sing.
Yeah.
So, thesis poem. Okay, the next poem is on, I believe it's on page 53. It's Night Swim.
There it is. I'll never forget that reading with Mark Strand at AWP. Mark Strand strolls up, you know, like about this speed from all the way in the back, and there's about 500 people. Remember this?
Oh, yeah.
And he's got his collected, or his selected, I believe it was, and he's up there, and he can't find them, and he starts, you know, this comedy routine, and it says, the poem starts speaking, and we've had it with you, Strand. So this is Night Swim. It's a page and a half, and I'm going to just sort of show it to you. Can't see it very well, would be my guess. But most poetry, you know, starts at the left, goes to the right, breaks somewhere, goes back to the left. This one has a sort of a pattern of indentation. And I remember when James Kimbrell was here in 2007, I think it was. He was teaching a class, and he said something about that. And I blurted out, "Why do you do that?" He goes, "I don't know." You know? I'm like, "Oh, well, thanks, Jimmy." But yeah, what he said was we sometimes just want to get away from the left side of the margin. The subject of the poem, I think, also works pretty well with the curviness of the lines. This is Night Swim. New growth budding on the May month trees, we troll our rail-thin bodies through the waters of Nathan Hansen's pool. His mother and father out for the night, and it's only logical our clothes shucked poolside in the grass as the first evening bats emerge to wing their scripture across the holy eyes of planets. It's as if we're subjects in a grand experiment. Nathan, Joanna, and I sprinting naked and turned the narrow tongue of the board and crying out distantly between the twangs of our dives and our splashdowns, lean and pale as the stripped spines of feathers. Together, we wade beneath that giant lens of sky, all three of us expert in our virgining, the light through the hardwoods that hangs above the pool, painting us one shade lighter than the dark, the flick of our bodies like newborn spirits, gravestone to gravestone, the white rinds of our smiling mouths, streak lines in a mirror. And perhaps I should credit dumb luck, perhaps instinct. When thinking our backs are turned, Joanna rises to perch but a moment on the pool's concrete cuff, and watching water slide from her back like mercury laid from a larger body of mercury, I reach for the globe of the sheepdog's tennis ball and thrust it. Ask anyone, striking one of those ill-fated bats mid-flight. Stunned, it tumbles like a fletchless arrow shot straight for the center of the earth. But by the time it should have smacked down in the water, we no longer can see it. That tiny creature, an agent of night, and even the last pairing of moon occluded, in that pin's drop of time when the bat must have snapped out of its dream and opened its wings as dark hibiscus blooms. The one thing we can see is that blade of liquid drawn when its wing skims the pool's meniscus. The one thing we can make out is Joanna at the pool's edge, still for once in the trick light of the corner of the eye, the night naked and quiet, the shudder of water rippling silently around us. You know, I started to smile through that poem because I hate to say this with a video camera going, but I still see it in the corner of my eye. Two-poem warning. A joke I stole from Robert Wrigley and perhaps was stolen from me recently. If you've bought the book, thank you. I'd love to sign it for you and give you a free gift. I have buttons. Do we have a button? No, it isn't. Okay. Buttons about this big, you know, to put them on. One is the cover of the book, which was actually, I commissioned it from a mutual friend of me, Justin and me. So it's an original piece of art. You get to own a little piece of it. Or you can have the button with a badass unicorn on it, which tends to be the winner. This next poem is right here next to the end of Night Swim, page 55, Perseus. It's for Judy Jordan, I know, because it says right here. Quatrain, tercet, tercet. Perseus. No words for that which holds him here, so silent. Mortal on this limestone bluff, wet leaves dead beneath wet snow, and day's last light scouring the west face of the ridge. Last night, it was the comet he eyed through the lens, elusive, wall-eyed luminance swallowed between the crosshairs. Now, late dusk, it's an answer he seeks of the upcountry, of its rivers carved long ago by glaciers. Now, it's an answer he seeks of this stunned earth, of this stunned body, body bound to nickel, body bound to iron, body bound by the self-same forces that fixed Perseus in the high north sky. But he doubts he's as alone as this arrangement of stars. The screech owls wail descending through the night. The bobcats cry that the sun turned moon. All of us, with this need for some belief, with this need for some faith, that someplace deep, a fire blazing to core, at some place not far, an ear for such lost and lonely music. You guys are snapping.
Snapping.
The last poem I'm going to read is the title poem, Ghost Gear. My father is not only 5'4", mom is 5'11". He's an amazing storyteller. He's really lived quite an amazing life. And as you learned from the first poem, I grew up in a very difficult, the more I'm learning from this book, a very difficult place for me to live. Other people did better than I did there. And I think that's what this book is in large part about. Grew up in a very rough neighborhood in Nashville, Tennessee, working class, mixed race, very poor. Now, houses are $500,000. And I grew up with these stories that he would tell of survival in the wilderness, for the most part. And it took me a long time to realize that a large part of the way I survived my urban wilderness was through his stories. And this is the first poem that I wrote for the book. It's the fourth poem I wrote in workshop. It's the first poem that Judy did not slaughter me for writing. And I just want to thank everybody who was there, who was part of that workshop. Martin was there. What really this poem did was it gave me a way to write this book. And this festival is about learning how to write books and celebrating how to write books and celebrating when books happen. And I'm just so pleased to do this. So before I get off of here, just thank you again. If you ever want to find me, my name's the only one in the world. So Google me, baby. All right. Ghost Gear. Low tide, my father high steps the trammel net, stoops half submerged into Naga Bay, and begins the work of disentangling yet another sockeye from the interlaced snares. He stands before me now, the same foot shorter he's been the last 10 years. My sister and I, nothing back then but a notion when my father could hold his breath well over a minute, he likes to say. How or why, I've learned not to ask. The familiar arc of his story cast out like he, the newest member of the crew, flown to the farthest edge of the intertidal. I could hear better than, he always adds. Good thing, I always think. Otherwise, he'd not have heard that thin cry of alarm from the beach. Otherwise, he'd not have looked up from his work to see the bellowing chord of the continental shelf rise to obscure summer's first dusk, as if Britamartis herself, goddess of fishermen, has half risen from the sea to encompass that final island of the Aleutians. Dumbstruck, my father watches the waves suck in the tide like a moth. His legs, wranglers rolled to the knee, for the first time exposed. The net, an organism in and of itself, a bare root system. Salmon left clapping wet sand as far as the eye can see, a wave the width of his vision, charging the land. My father claims that in such moments the body lightens. My father claims that there he saw himself bird's eye view, that he watched himself look up at the sky, and the sky had become a mirror. And he sees his body ascend the cumulus as if pulled by threads of light, each thrust of the sky's wide wings lifting him ever closer to a rift in the clouds. But my father does not kneel genuflect to the gods. My father does not consider his sins or ask for forgiveness. Rather, he gives his marrow to those ropes. He weaves himself into those moorings. And the last thing he sees is the wave. And the last thing he hears is something like the clap of 1,000 hands. And the sea took him. Language fails my father here, so he resorts to sound. Wham! Slamming one open palm into the other as if to quash something living, his posture surging in our living room, the tumblings of his cliffhanger, body whipped by the imagined sea. How do I describe what seemed like hours beneath the waves? I am a poet retelling a telling. The sea did not care about my father, but the wave came and went, and my father held his ground. The backdraft strong in the waves wake Britamarta's final tug for his spirit. And he lashed the flesh of his life from that ocean, and the water receded. Now, my father lights up when he tells her to return to the beach as slowly as possible. And how when the men finally saw him emerge from the sea, they cheered his name. My father returned from what they believed to be the dead. Ghost gear, they call it. Nets and riggings lost at sea to fish for no man. Blindly trolling seines illuminating the deep with their bioluminescent catch. Ruptured buoys and trammels coasting past coral reefs until they drift down, down, down into the dark. Only once have I asked my father why he chose out there to live. Only once has he told me that as the wave approached, he heard a voice. And that voice asked him, "Are you a father?" And my father said, "Yes." Thank you.